Welcome to the Viva Vegan podcast. Tanya O'Callaghan is an accomplished bassist from Ireland who has toured and recorded with major artists, including Whitesnake, Dee Snider, Stephen Adler, and one of my favourites, Maynard James Keenan. Beyond music, she's a passionate vegan and environmental advocate, and co-creator of the travel and food series Highway to Health, which explores plant-based living around the world. Tanya brings a unique blend of musicianship and activism to everything she does. So Tanya, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Viva.
No, anytime. So we're going to talk a little bit about your kind of vegan journey, a bit about Highway to Health, and also your kind of musical career as well. There's quite a lot to pack in.
It's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, I bet it has. So let's go back to the sort of the beginning, because you were born in like a small town in Ireland. And what was it like for you kind of growing up? Veganism and vegetarian, I'm guessing at that kind of time wasn't really a thing.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I'm from a little town called Mullingar, and I had a very kind of quintessential, simple Irish small town childhood, the pre-phones and social media, which I'm so grateful for. We didn't really even have TV channels, and I love that. That's my foundation. So with that, I also, where we grew up, behind the house was a field full of cows. Because there's a lot of farms in Ireland, as people know. But I thought as a little girl, I loved animals since I can remember. It's my first memories. But I thought that the cows were my pets. So I named everything, every animal, every stray came home with me, all of that. And so that was like the spark when I was super young. And I realized that, there was this like innate draw to animals that I always just had. And then veganism, there was no word. I didn't hear the word vegan until I think I was about 16 or 17. There was vegetarian, for sure. But my brother told me when I was like 4 or 5 that what was on the table was Daisy, which was one of the cows. It wasn't actually Daisy, but he was just, being an older brother and taunting me. But that's my first extremely vivid memory. And I remember how it felt. And then it was like, hold on a minute. If that takes killing an animal to be on the table, then I don't want anything got to do with that, because I love animals. And I just remember that like synopsis in my little brain, like it's like, this doesn't equate for me. So that just like really was a profound moment for me. So I refused to eat meat from that point on. And I've no recollection of meat before that because I was so young. So essentially I've, been veggie vegan my whole life, and by default I don't like dairy. My mum has the same thing, so I have like we taste dairy as kind of sour, so there wasn't a lot of dairy in my diet other than we don't have the problem in Ireland where like milk powder is everywhere like in the US. It's shoved into everything. That wasn't a thing. So aside from probably like cheese on the odd thing or that, I was essentially a by accident vegan. But yeah, and then when I was a teenager, I met a vegan in Dublin, and it was
a real life one,
a real life vegan. But I also started working in a rescue shelter when I was 8, and I did 10 years there, and I was kind of training to be like a vet's assistant before I picked up a bass guitar.
Yeah, because you wanted to be a vet or a marine biologist, is that right? When you were little and younger,
a little different than what turned out. So I spent all my time at the rescue shelter. It was, just outside my hometown, and I volunteered there when I was 8 with a school class, and I just loved it so much that like that's where I spent all my time. I went there after school. I got dropped there every weekend by my parents, and it became my life very much. And through that, I was learning a lot of animal care. So it was more that it was looking like a natural progression that I would do veterinary work or take over a shelter or do something like that, because it's all I did. And I did a lot of protests. I was heavily involved in the animal rights movement young in Ireland. I got all that out of my system young.
It's probably the best time.
Throwing the fake blood on the fur, going to hare coursing, fox hunting protests, like you name it. I was writing letters like a lunatic as a young girl. But that's my foundation in animal rights, and it's pretty like the punk version of it, which I'm kind of glad that I got that out of my system young, and then started to like approach veganism and the plant-based like from a more educational standpoint later on.
That's amazing because, I mean, when you were younger as well, it sounds like your parents were very supportive. I was watching an episode of The Highway to Health, and I think you were mentioning that your mum was given, like, happy for you to do it, but was given a lot of, like, misinformation from the doctors and things like that.
Huge. Yeah, huge. It's weird when you think back. I mean, I think they were afraid because there was no nutritional. There was, now we can go online and find anything. Obviously, we didn't have a computer or anything like that, but people had no real solid nutritional advice around like growing children and protein and what protein even is. And my mum got told by a doctor, which I just think is so hilarious, that I might get rickets, which has nothing got to do with like, so weird. But I think that was just, lack of information around at the time. So my mum would try to liquidize meat into my potatoes, which was, God bless her. She was just, she didn't know. And then at a certain point, a little while into it, they're just looking at me going, she's not going to eat it. So like, let's stop trying to force her. And then, that's when they started, because in Ireland, it's a very plain cuisine. Let's just say growing up, it's, meat and 2 veg, and spuds, of course, like everything has potatoes. So I just, instead of having the meat, they would just put like a veggie burger or something, because we still had that psychology of like, you have to replace the meat, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely a journey for them too, because I wouldn't say that it was initially something they supported, but they had a very stubborn child. So they saw after a while that, when you have that moment, or when I had it anyway, and as a child, I can't look at meat the same way. So I'm always going to see a dead animal. So that's never going to change, no matter how you like coat it or put it in something or hide it. It's just like my brain is going, that's Daisy, that's my friend.
It's true. I think, when you look at slabs of meat, for me, it's the worst. Somehow it's even worse than like fish, but when you see a slab of meat, it's like flesh. It's veins.
Quite bonkers.
It is
quite bonkers.
Yeah, there's no going back. And I mean, obviously, when you sort of mentioned as well that you kind of you were really into the advocacy and an activist part of this, did you think that would be your life, that you'd be doing that when you got older as well? And how did you end up moving into music? What was the kind of connection there?
Yeah, I definitely, like, if you had asked me up until 15, 16, 17, I probably would have guessed. I was starting to think of other ways that I could be involved with, like, animals and nature. So that's why like marine biology was on my radar for a while. But as soon as I learned you had to dissect animals, I was like, maybe not the science part so much. I love science, and then it kind of looked at one point that I would just, transition from like veterinary care assistant to do, go and train in the vets in my hometown. But I decided when I was 17 to drop out of school as another act of rebellion. Essentially in hindsight, because I was bored. I love learning and I love education, but I didn't really fit in the neurotypical box, let's just say, of like how, especially then, things have changed. The education system has shifted a little bit for different types of learners, but I was having a really hard time in the format. I was a great student. I was a straight A student, but I was never allowed to ask questions. I went to like an all-girls, very strict Catholic school. So when you are going in any way against the grain, that just like causes a lot of tension. Because I wouldn't eat meat, my home economics class, my teacher threw me out of class. Like all these really weird things in hindsight, the adults should have like seen something different. But so when I dropped out, and that was a real shakeup for my family, because it's like, you're almost finished. But I was like, fuck the system, the time. But I had to do a course. I had to do something, because, the one thing I promised my parents is I'll do something. I'll find something to do. Like I'm a highly engaged person. It's not that I wanted to drop out and do nothing. And then like joined it. There was a course in my hometown that was essentially for like high school dropouts, but you could do culinary cooking, you do computers, and there was a music course. And I always loved music. Like I was always around it. We have a very musical town, but I hadn't played music yet. I had just recently taken an interest in playing drums first, actually. So I signed up for the course as a drummer, and then I went in and they didn't have a drum kit. They just had like an electronic thing. And long story short, I seen a local bass player playing and I was just mesmerized by bass. So I was like, I'm going to do that. And the rest is history, I guess.
It's really interesting. It seems like, your life now obviously is built around music and also veganism and, the compassion for the animals. And there's certain people you meet And it's very much like there's almost, I mean, obviously, I'm like you. I went to a Catholic school, and fuck me, that was not for me either. I
Yeah.
did the dropout college and got like 7 A levels, and they were like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, because there's no rules, and I can do what I want,
Right.
and I'll learn
Yes,
this
free
way."
learning.
Yeah, but it's funny because with it's like a vocational. There's a calling almost. I mean, are you somebody who's always kind of listened to their gut when you have that, and you're like,
Massive.
this feels like truth for me,
Yes.
and yeah.
Massively. Like, I cannot even stress that enough. So, like, the most pivotal moments in my younger life that I remember, like, in my core, are when I was 4, when I was told what meat was. And I just know intuitively, if in order for me to be in congruency with my own morals, I cannot say I love animals and eat them. Decided. And then, I was trying to stay in school for other people, and having the push and pull of society presuming you were going to drop out because you were just too lazy to finish or you're whatever, but not understanding at the time that actually I really love learning and I want to learn more and I want to ask all the questions. But this type of school is like, here are the boxes and this is all you're allowed to ask about. So that's really frustrating. So I remember really, really clearly deciding, and the day that I walked out, and even though it was very scary and, everyone's like, what are you doing? You're almost finished. I was like, no, I know. I know that I can't waste any more time over here. I need to go over here and I'm going to figure it out because my internal compass of navigation is saying this.
No, it's amazing.
Slight left turn,
Yeah, but it's funny because when you try to do things that aren't right for you, even if you succeed, for a little bit,
Yeah.
it's detrimental long term. And
I
you
think
just
it's
think,
a massive problem in the world in general. And I think that it's not that it's anybody's fault, but like we're in societies that sort of, you're supposed to do this, this, and this, and you think that you're doing everything right. And then you get to a certain point in your life and your adulthood that there's this push and pull. Like maybe you're not actually living. I think there's a lot of buzzwords these days. It's overused, like your purpose or you're this or you're that, but you've gone so far into it that you're out of alignment with yourself, essentially. So the one thing that, even though it's been an incredibly roller coaster type journey, what I chose, it's always been me actually following the path that I think that I'm here for.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Like, let's go into sort of the bass side of things then. So you kind of gone to the college and you were mesmerized. How did that then translate to you being in America and being, playing with like as a touring bassist with, big bands like Whitesnake and Puscifer and, meeting Maynard, James Keenan and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, like, I really latched on to bass. I loved it. There was no bass teacher, though. So there was only a guitar teacher, and he was very supportive, and he tried to, like, guide me of how, like, giving me a couple of books and giving me a bass to practice on. So because I didn't actually have a teacher, and I was going to be totally self-taught, so I have no foundational, like, training in music, my way of learning was, let me join bands. So I joined my cousin's band a few weeks after I picked up a bass. And I was gigging within like the first few months. Absolutely terrible. Totally shy. But when you force yourself into the situation of having to like learn all these songs and then play them the correct way live with the band working as a unit, when I look back, that was my greatest teacher. So I became really obsessed with joining bands. Like early on, I was always in multiple bands. And then at, a year or so in, I was joining corporate bands, which was, like wedding bands, bands that play all these like corporate, having to learn like all these songs.
I bet you see some sights as well as a wedding band performer, don't you?
Oh my God, I've seen so many bridezillas in my early career. It's hilarious. But that really was an amazing teacher for me because I was always the least experienced in the band. Like I was joining bands of guys that had been playing since they were kids, that had classical or jazz training. And I was really in the deep end, but I think that was good for me musically early on. So essentially over the first few years, I was just in a fuckload of bands. Like I was in, the local cover band. I had my original band. I would do like acoustic sets with singers. I would do whatever it was, open mic nights, jam nights. I had all this stuff going on. And then I decided to, start to I had heard the term session musician per se. And I started to try to pivot into that world, and I was getting like TV house band gigs. So you're in the background for like a Saturday night show, and off the back of that, you would get asked to do, well, that artist is going to go out and do a tour. So that started to happen, the first few years of my career. And I was like, oh, I kind of really like this thing of, I always had an original band, and I always loved that creative center. But it's also like, well, if I want to make this my career and my income and living, I need to figure out how to make it my income, which would be like being a hired gun, which they call it in the US. So that was basically like a lot of the early years. And I was in so many bands. At one stage, I was in like 7 or 8 bands at the same time. And I was just gigging all the time. It was insane. And then I was gigging in, so the first like American break per se was I was gigging in Glasgow actually. And the same few days, Tool were playing. I was a big Tool fan. But I've never been like a fan in the sense that like it's a fandom thing. I want to go see the production and it's kind of a different creative aspect. Because I actually hate being in the crowd.
Yeah.
I'd be very introverted. People find it like funny when I say I'm introverted, but actually I'm extremely introverted when I'm not like on tour. But I like being on the stage because there's a barrier between, and you have this like protective space. So I don't go to a lot of gigs because I actually don't enjoy the experience of being like in the crowd. But my crew, so some of the techs and the sound engineers and that were working that show. So we'd like mutual people. So I ended up going. And I met Maynard and Danny and a few of the cats after, and we just started talking about music. And it was just one of these totally natural. At the time, I was obsessed with like Indian conical rhythms, which is like, how to play odd times with this really cool syllabus thing. And I was talking to Danny about that.
I was
and
going to say, Danny Carey's going
to
to love that, isn't he?
Yeah, we were just having a musician's chat, basically. Yeah. And then Maynard was telling me about Puscifer. Funny enough, they're playing here tomorrow night, and I'm going to meet them tomorrow. I haven't seen them in a while. So it's like, oh, perfect timing for Puscifer. But he told me he has this other project. And I'm thinking, well, he has Tool and Perfect Circle. I didn't know about Puscifer at the time. And essentially, Puscifer, as you know, is like a rotating door of guest musicians. And he asked me, would I be interested in playing on something? And you're like, oh, sure, let me check my diary. Okay, Maynard. Yeah, I absolutely respect him as a musician. Obviously, love all the bands and all the music he's done. So I went home to Ireland. I think it was the next day. I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here. I need to go to America. Right. So I need to go to America. And, there's a few emails back and forth, and we organized that. And I end up going out to Arizona. And this was a real deep end moment because I wonder how they work. Like, what's going to happen? I'm used to pre-learning sets of songs. Like, I'm told we're doing this set list, learn all these songs, come and play them. But I was like, no, we're just going to write an album. It's like, oh, okay. What'll I bring?
Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah. Yeah, so off I went. My parents were like, oh, Jesus, what is she doing? Off I went to America, hang out with a bunch of rock stars and write music. But it was wonderful because, in hindsight, and I said this to Maynard years later, that like the fact that he took a risk on me as a young player was really cool because he could have just been like, oh, it's just a, player. Because I wasn't asking him, obviously. Like, it wasn't like, oh, hey, I really want to. It just happened completely naturally. And then he invited me out and I ended up with him and Josh and a few of the guys. We just wrote a bunch of songs. A couple of them made the records. Toma and Polar Bear are co-writes that I was on.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, they're so fun. And it was just a really wonderful experience, again, for me to be in this like super pure situation and watch the creative act unfold. And it was great. And so then I went back to Ireland with my tail between my legs. It's like, oh, I want to do that.
Yes.
But, I live in Ireland and I'm, I'm still basically a kid.
Yeah. How old are you at this point? Were you like really young or?
I was in my very early 20s.
Wow.
I think I was like 21, if even 2021. So that was my first big kind of super professional outside of studios and stuff in Ireland. And then, I came home and I had to figure out, what I was going to do next. So there was a lot of gigging, saving, because you can't just come to the US. You can come for 90 days. I was like, oh no, I need a fucking visa now on top of all this. So a few years passed of just doing like the whole hustle of saving and trying to figure out visas, and I don't know anyone here, and it's like, what am I going to do? Will I go to New York? And I decided to go to London for a while, thinking let me try just across the pond, and the weather was too close to Ireland. I couldn't do it. I was like, no, rainy, grey. So my stint in London was short, but I did some fun gigging there. And then I kind of decided, because it's just, I like to put a lot of like positive pressure, I guess, on myself. So if I go really far away on my own, I don't know anyone, I'm going to have to figure it out. So I came to the US on a visitor visa first, and I started going to, NAM and all the music expos, because I literally did not know one person. Maynard had moved back to Arizona at this stage, so he wasn't even here at all. So anyway, I just basically went to a bunch of music conventions. You talk to everyone, you're walking around your bass on your back, like, I need a gig, like, where do I go? And it's a very slow process, but I would go back and forth. So I would go for a month, run out of money because it's so expensive, go home to Ireland, gig like a lunatic, go back for a month. And I did this for like 3 years, back and
Wow.
forth. And in the whole time I was trying to build up a situation where I could get hired so I could apply for a visa. So that would eventually happen. I got a gig, and then you can, apply for an actual artist visa. So I did that. So I got my first visa on like the 4th or 5th trip. And that had me here for like a year. And then, it was this crazy process of
Build.
like back and forth. But each visit to the US, I would make more connections, and I would, get invited. And eventually I was invited to play open jam nights. And that's where you, get to kind of cut your teeth. You meet the real gigging people. And I would meet guys that play in all the big bands and be like, where do I go? Like, what do I do? So, it's one of those things, like, no matter what you're trying to achieve in life, you should go find the people that are already doing it and ask them all the questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a process of that. And then people see you play. And then once, it took years, but once that started to snowball, it really started. And then I was like in all of the 80s bands all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, which is an interesting trajectory. I mean, yeah, like Dee Snider and Whitesnake and all these bands, it's just like, oh, okay, I guess this is what you're doing now, right? And then,
Now I do the 80s.
yeah, now maybe I'll do the 90s. And, I guess you just have to
Who
go
knows?
with,
Yeah.
with what's available, right, at the time as well. And
Yeah, I did a lot of pop gigs first. So my first like gigs here, where I did a lot with like the Disney label artists, and that was fun, but it's a very different thing because you're kind of hired as what we call like wallpaper. So the band is hired to just be, it's very staged, and then the pop artist is doing their thing, and it's fun, and you meet great players and all that. But it wasn't until like Dee Snider asked me to do like a one-off show. It's the famous story with us. We're just doing a one-off show, and then it turned into like 2 years of working together, and it was amazing. But Dee and being in a band like that was the first, like, you're free to be yourself on stage, which was super fun. So you're like quite literally rocking out with these like rock legends. And then, yeah, after Dee, and I did a bunch with Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses, did his stuff. And then after that, David Coverdale had seen me play it, because you're touring the same circuit. So you're often on like the bill of festivals with all these bands. So everybody knows each other in some iteration of band members. And David saw me play, and he kind of had it clocked in his head. So when the bass chair opened for Whitesnake, he immediately called me, and he's like, I saw you play. Do you remember we met at such and such? I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. And then, and then I met Bruce for the orchestra gig. So now I'm doing the Bruce Dickinson gig. And yeah, it's a lot of juggling the 80s.
it's amazing. And I mean, I guess like, we'll talk a bit about the Highway to Health in a minute, but there was the episode where you're actually in America, kind of seeing where Derek grew up in his hometown. And then you're,
Yeah.
but the next episode, he's come to like Ireland to see where you're from. And it's like, they're two different worlds, And
Yeah.
when you moved to America and you started doing all this, what was it like for you? Was there any kind of like, especially as you're coming back and forth, was it quite strange for you? Because it's like you existing in two different places, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I hated LA. I'll be
Yeah.
totally honest. Like, I really didn't like it because, and now I don't live in LA anymore. I live in a tiny town hours outside of it, because I am a small town girl at heart,
Yeah.
and I need that. I need that calmness when I'm off the road. I need to be like as far away from people and as close to nature as possible. I didn't like it, but again, back to your gut point, there was something in me that, like, this is where the people are. Like, I would go to all these iconic venues, some of which sadly are gone now. But you've got the baked potato, and you've got the whiskey, and you've got the Viper, and you've got these places where, on any given night of the week at that time, I think I caught the last wave of like really being able to go to LA, meet the other session musicians, make these connections and networks, get recommended for gigs. So it's just this process of like, well, I have to be around the people that are doing the thing that I'm trying to achieve. So it wasn't that I liked LA. I hated Hollywood. It was, there's a lot of sketchy, shady people around. You're somewhat young and vulnerable in a sense that like you're here alone. I'm broke as a motherfucker because like the difference between earning a good living in small town Ireland versus trying to make that like translate to living in LA to rent a room in a house
No.
full of people or to even stay at a hostel is like an entire month's income in Ireland. So like figuring that out and being like, oh my God, I have to like really up my game here if I need to leave here.
I mean, it's unimaginable. I was a music journalist in London when I was younger, and
Oh wow.
that was that rock and metal for rock sound, and it was like that was one thing. But I can't, in America you've got the taxes on top of everything, and it's like it's unimaginable. Because I was like, oh, I'll be all right on this holiday to LA. I've got a bit of money. I also hated it, but I was like, oh my God, I'm broke, and all I've had is like some chips. It's like here's $2 on top of that, and I'm like, what am I paying for here? It's it's a salad or
Yeah. No, totally. It's definitely a different experience for sure.
yeah. But
It's very overpriced, especially now. But I don't know how I guess you just figure stuff out. You figure it out as you go, and you have to work more.
pure nerve. Yeah. I mean, let's talk a little bit now about like the Highway to Health as well, and how that kind of came about, because it's a great like documentary series, and you learn a lot about places and food and like different cultures and different people's stories. So yeah, I loved it. I
So
thought it was great.
thank you. And I hope that we can like send some stuff over to you guys. We were talking about doing some stuff with Viva because it's I do. So I think that the thing that well now people are starting knowing more because I'm posting more about it. But I do a lot of work outside of music. Most of it's in the background. I work for a lot of foundations. Like I just came back from Africa and doing a big collaboration in Senegal with a women's foundation out there. But I do a lot of stuff just because what I've been trying to do the whole time with my music career is bring back. So that childhood activist side of me is first and foremost who I am. And I ended up being a bass player. So it's like, how do I bridge the two and how do I use this platform that I've created? Because I certainly don't want the platform just for a platform. Like it seems like an empty shell unless you're using your platform for a mission of some kind. So over the years, I've had all these different like passion projects and ideas to like, how can we just use our platforms to normalize veganism and show how easy and fun it is? So Derek and I have been friends for years, and obviously Derek is touring with Sepultura for 100 years now, as you
Yeah.
say.
A
But
long time.
if myself and Derek have been touring around the world forever, and we were sitting talking one day actually in Dublin, and he had an idea for a show, and I had an idea for a food thing, and it's like, why don't we just join forces? Because as touring musicians who spend most of our lives on the road, if we can do this, we can show how easy it is. So that's how it initially started. And my friends in Dublin have a production company, and we were like, let's just, start filming some stuff and let's meet up on the road. And everyone I reached out to said, yes, let's do it. And then, so we started, I went out and I fundraised a little bit through the plant-based philanthropic movement to see if we could get some backing, just, get the cameras, get the visas, get the travel stuff. So we went out and we ended up filming like an entire series. But like many people in projects, COVID kind of
Yeah.
screwed us timing wise because we ended up having filmed all this amazing stuff and then the entertainment industry just went bam. So right as we were ready to, edit everything and kind of get it out there. So that's why we decided to put what's currently up on YouTube. So it's just been like a slow drip as we figure out like where it should live, because we just want to we just want to put it out. It's not that we're like holding it to try and get like the perfect deal. It's just really fun footage from all over the world that we cover. It's mostly food and it's mostly exploring like plant-based cuisines and all that. But we also have some really cool guests, like from totally different walks of life. We touched into like the materials world. So taking animals out of like the materials world, the automotive industry. We talked to Ford in Brazil. We were on board with Sea Shepherd. We did like loads of different stuff, but it all comes back to like, essentially, if there's one thing that's as close to a panacea as the world can find, it's like if everyone starts to transition to plant-based. So, and it's just fun. It's all very positive because both Derek and I feel that it's really hard in the animal rights movement, as you know, like to exist knowing all this shit constantly every second is happening to animals, but you have to find positive ways to live living by example as we do. It's like we go around the world. We live some of the most brutal travel lives there are. I know touring on the outside looks super glamorous, And, sometimes some parts of it are more high end or whatever, but no matter whether you are flying private and have your own drivers, you're still on the go constantly, like in a different country every day, playing shows every night. So our whole thing was, if we can do it, anybody can do it. If we're in, Bulgaria or Brazil, or we're in the Antarctica, or we're in Australia, wherever we are, like, and we're not even thinking, it's just super easy to be vegan anywhere. It's trying to break down that misconception around it being hard, because
Yeah.
I've never found it hard.
That's interesting. I mean, I know for me, like Happy Cow as an app was a godsend. I was in Japan when I was like 26, I think. And I had no idea like where I was, how I was going to get anywhere. I was like, this is one of those journeys you should kind of pay attention to. And it's kind of like you can't just make it up and see what happens when you get there, Faye.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, I don't know how vegan I was. I was just trying to guess off the menu and like eating round things. I was like, I think this is tofu, but
Eating
Happy
round
Cow,
things.
like, is this okay? But like,
I don't think it looks like it comes from an animal.
I can't tell, but I'm also so starving at this point. Like, it's been weeks now, and it's like, it's hard.
It might be an eyeball, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. I hope it was already dead when they sourced it. Like, what? No, this is weird. And it's like, like Happy Cow completely revolutionized like travel, and it made things so simple. Even if it's just like, okay, go to this place and you can get like, I don't know, you can get carrots and eat them if needs be.
Yeah. No, totally. And it's a great tool. Like Happy Cow, Yelp, Google, I use all the time. But before that, before we had that, I always tell people this, and I just started writing my first book actually, and it is a cookbook with all my musical journey through it. But one of my biggest tips has always been order sides. Because that's what I did from when I was like super young. Because no matter where you go, whether it's a pub in Ireland or whatever, a steakhouse in the US, everywhere has sides. And if you look at it for a minute, the chances are you can build a little meal around, a baked potato and some broccoli or whatever. So it's like, order the sides, look at the sides, or just read what's actually in the dish and just take the chicken out and ask, if they have something like cashew nuts or whatever. But even at that, like if you have to, for 1 or 2 meals, take the protein out, you're not going to die.
No, you'll be fine. And also, we don't need as much as people keep saying we do. We're okay. We survive.
Yeah, no, we're a little bit obsessed with that. I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
I know, yeah.
I'm somehow alive.
We all are.
It's a miracle. I'm seriously 30-something years later, I'm just waiting to die of that protein deficiency. I don't know when it's going to happen.
I think you'll be all right. It's, you've traveled pretty much everywhere. Did you ever have any kind of misconceptions maybe, or where you think it would be difficult to get vegan food, but then it turned out to be completely the opposite, or?
I think that because maybe it's just a mindset thing, I've never really found it super difficult. I think one of the places I was most surprised, I've toured a lot around Brazil, and Brazil is huge. And everyone would tell me before I go to Brazil, it's going to be so hard because like there's so much meat. Oh my God. I'm like, wow, God, and I think it is the easiest place in the world to be vegan because it's Brazil. They have like the most remarkable fruits and vegetables, like stuff that looks like it's out of a fairy tale, because they have the Amazon and the markets there. You go and like, it's just so abundant in fruits and vegetables. It's unbelievable. But I think just because of the traditions of the meat houses, the churrascarias and all that. And again, it's the whole thing, like you go and there's all these traditional dishes that has like one meat aspect, and I could just ask for it without that. And then I'm like, that feijoada is now vegan because you took that out. And everyone's like, oh yeah. Like, just put sweet potato in, or they have the best fruit in the world. So there's a couple of countries like that where people would say to me, oh God, it's going to be so hard, or some of the Slavic countries. But again, it's sides like always save the day. I think the hardest places health-wise, not so much that you can't get options, is touring like a bus tour in America, because you're like you're pulling into those like very generic strip malls where the bus is going to, gas up, and there's all the usuals like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, and I don't want to eat that. So I'll go to the petrol station or gas station, as the US says, and I will get, apple, popcorn, a bag of nuts, and I'll sustain myself until I go to the hotel or whatever, because I don't want to just eat the fast food. But other than that, I think everywhere's been, again, because I have been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
It's probably, it's so normal to me. There's some places that definitely associate meat with affluence. So I remember when I first went to Africa, and in South Africa, it was very funny actually, because I went into townships it was wonderful. I got invited into Langa to meet the families in like one of the poorest places in the world. There's 1 million people in the township. And this family invited me in for dinner, and because I was a Western guest, they had gotten meat.
Oh no.
They can't afford meat.
Yeah.
And they eat like this, usually it's kind of like maize, put, and it's fantastic, and some veggies. But it was hilarious because the person that was translating was like, she doesn't eat animals. And they're just dying laughing. It's like, what? I'm like, you please eat it, don't waste it, please have it. And then we ended up having this really funny exchange. But that happens sometimes. Like I just came back from Senegal. I was in Senegal and Kenya. And there is an association, unfortunately, in some developing worlds that meat equals affluence, which I love having conversations with, because I'm like, actually, how you eat naturally, you guys have it right.
Yes.
Meat
it's
is just
so
being
true.
kind of forced. It's like a marketing thing, and obviously what it's doing to the planet and the oceans and everything else we could go on for hours about. But that's fascinating to me, because I saw it in China as well, the first and the second time I went to China, like the difference when you see more and more fast food chains come in and you see more and more obese Chinese children, which is, your brain is like, but wait, culturally, they're not an overweight culture
No.
naturally. And then you're looking around going, oh yeah, no, these weren't here before. Okay, yeah.
It's really sad, and it's obviously,
Yeah.
it's the Western influence, isn't it, upon them? And
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Viva Uganda, and so we
Oh,
do.
awesome.
Yeah, it's great, but we do projects out there, and it's really sad because actually, traditionally, they had a very good diet.
Amazing.
And it's so sad because actually now, yeah, like you say, affluence and meat, that association. But now they're starting to get the kind of health problems that go along with that, the diabetes.
100%.
All of the, type 2 diabetes, all the things that you expect from red meat diets.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do like a project there that's kind of like Love Your Heart for 7 days. And it's literally just kind of taking them back to their roots and what they were already doing before Western intervention.
Yes.
And
100%. I literally just, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, I think I talked to Andy about it a bit, because I just came back from Senegal and I'm doing this project, which is very similar, but through an existing foundation where we're going to add a module to this amazing, amazing foundation called Tall Stand that my hero runs, Molly Melching. She's been out there for 50 years now.
wow.
Long story short, Molly went in the 70s to do a French language exchange and never got the telegram that it was cancelled.
Oh, no.
She stayed. And that wasn't her plan, but there's a book called However Long the Night that I urge absolutely everybody to read, because her approach to social change is something that inspires me every day. And it really spoke to me because she doesn't go in and like judge people based on, a lot of times foundations go in and they mean well, but they're not communicating with people. You can't just, go in and say, well, this is how we do it, so we're banning that, we're doing that. So Molly has done remarkable work in education for children, and also FGC with female genital cutting, but not through like a judgmental way, through education with women for human rights and the fact that you have rights. So anyway, Molly and I became connected a couple of years ago, and we're like, how could we collaborate? So I went out, and to your point, it's so interesting because I had the most remarkable talks in the villages with farmers. How hard it is, because I'm thinking, if you're having a hard time with drought and food and enough food for your family, it must be super hard to also keep animals alive.
Yeah.
And they know their soil so well. They know, they're so in tune with the land. It's just like, I was so in awe of how innately in tuned people are out there to, you're already doing it right. Exactly to your point. Like, your traditional diet is so healthy, and you don't have all these heart disease, diabetes, other things, obviously, that you come up against that, we don't have as many problems with medically in the US, but that's more due to like poverty line stuff. But don't let the West influence come in, because as you see heart disease, as you see all that. And I think that was so inspiring for me and for them to have that conversation of like, you guys are actually you are doing it the right way. Please lead the world Like, you are doing it the right way. And that was super fun. So I'm going to be going back in a couple of months. We're going to be setting that all up. It'll be like between Gambia and Senegal. And I'm sure we might have some crossover with it. So
Absolutely. Oh, that's an amazing project. It's going back to your roots again, isn't it? It's that activism and wanting,
yeah.
things to be more fair. And we found that as well. Just like we're doing a gorilla, basically protecting gorillas out there as well. And we've teamed up
Nice.
with local rangers, and some of them used to actually be poachers, and they've
I love that. I
done
love that.
180, and now
Yes,
they're
yeah.
protecting the gorillas. And there's
Yeah.
so many different assets to it. Like it's like planting kind of like forestry and things like that keep the gorillas aren't really interested in, to keep that barrier away from like humans, because they're encroaching ever closer to them. And
Nice.
there's so much potential to like help, but working with the people, because they, like you say, they know everything. They know the land.
They know everything.
They're
They
so
know
much more
everything, and
connected.
you have to zone out, because I think it's one of the detrimental things. I know most like activism is meant well, but with poachers, for instance, and I have a few friends that run different like anti-poaching foundations, especially in Africa. But it's not like, if you really zoom out and look at the problem, the poachers are most likely poorer people who are being paid by whomever it is to do this horrible job. I don't think that they ever want to be doing it. So if you take the poachers who intuitively love and know their land and put education into the equation of like why it's more important to protect, of course they're going to go do that. They don't want to be killing them. It's the same like we talk to illegal fishers, undercover stuff down in Mexico, where it's a trade from somewhere else. It's some Eastern or Asian trade that they're being paid to poach, and they're getting paid to do that, and they're desperate because they want to feed their families. So you really need to zoom out on these problems and I think education is like the most powerful tool for like forward motion with social change, for sure. And I love to hear that you guys are doing that instead of, because a lot of people, there's a lot of like performative activism, banners on Facebook. This is now what my banner says. And it's like, okay, that's lovely. But, and again, I think people are inherently kind, and I think most people want to see things done the right way. But like action like that is really profound.
No, I agree. I think it's, again, not to keep attacking the West, but it's things kind of get like
Damn West.
Yeah, I know it's terrible, but you saw it with like things like Pride, when it just became a marketing activity, and you're like, wait, hang on, what is behind all this? This is absolutely so far removed at this point. Everything's just advertising.
It's so distracting, because at the end of the day, I mean, I wish it wasn't so complicated. I wish that we didn't need a label as vegans. I mean, this pisses a lot of vegans off. I'm like, please shut up, because I've been doing this my whole life. People give me shit because I say I don't like the word, not because I'm not a proud vegan. It's a label that to me suggests my ethics more than the food, right? But I don't think it should need a label.
Agreed.
It should go without saying. I don't think all the labels do is like categorize everybody into whatever it is, politics or food choices or sexual choices, religious choices, whatever. And then we're all like, okay, all in these little boxes.
It's true. It's
just
true.
go without saying that you should live a kind life.
Yes.
Be as kind as you can to others and all species or whatever. And that, if that sounds hippie, then so be it. But
no, I don't think it does. And it's right. They're all designed anyway for like infighting and for division. That's the whole
exhausting.
Purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it ends up distracting us from, like, I was talking about this the other day at a conference, that like, unfortunately, it's actually quite boring, the solution, in a way. Like, it's quite like, politics should be boring. Politics shouldn't be all over. Like, it shouldn't be a Twitter war or whatever's going on. They're civil servants. It's supposed to be quite like, just go get the work done. It has become like the worst game show in the world, in every country.
Yeah.
But the same with activism. It's like it's now kind of dangerous that you see people do, because it waters down the real work, and there's people doing real work, obviously, but you see, on social media, someone recording themselves doing a good deed and being like, look at me do the thing. And it's this very strange psychological shift in the human race. So it's like, hold on a minute. That's like, in order to have true altruism, you shouldn't need to brag about it. So then when, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, when there is actual amazing work going on and someone tries to fundraise or push, so it gets so watered down that I always have found it just way better to work quietly in the background.
Agreed.
Just
It's gross. I find it a bit disgusting, honestly, when people are doing that. Like, here's a homeless guy, I gave him this and changed his life, and you're like, just stop it, like, please. It's really
Yeah,
vile.
yeah. We definitely live in a weird
Yeah,
tech time.
we do. Let's keep it positive, though. I mean,
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
like I mean, the work you're doing it's amazing, and it feels like you're very much kind of going back into that kind of. Did you ever lose that activist spark, or is that just something you've had your whole life?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It just gets more and more. I think the period of me trying to really sink my roots into the US music scene, there was, I wouldn't say a pause. Like, I've always been vegan, and I've always been like, every conversation, every meal has, it comes up in my why, and I'm constantly talking to people about it. But no, it's just like, and once I settled here and got the actual visa, I immediately started to, I'm like, okay, now I have my visa, I can stay here. Where are the animal rights groups? So that's when I started to like figure out who I could connect with in that realm, and start to get to know people who were doing the documentaries, people who were doing the protests and the vigils, and I was very heavily involved early on. But no, that never leaves, because that is long before I was a basser. That's who I am, and I ended up having this platform, which is great and wonderful, and what an honor to have toured the world with all of these people. But more and more now, like, I transition back into my roots, and I obviously will still continue to tour, but I found a much better balance with how I can spend my time, as far as I would have been like for the past. I've been on tour for 20 years,
Wow.
basically. But
Yeah.
for the past
Wow.
10, I have not been off the road much for breaks longer than a month or two, because I'm in multiple bands. One tour would finish, I might have a week or so to get ready, and then I'd be gone out again. And that was really hurting my heart with activism,
Yeah.
because I couldn't go and get involved in all this stuff. But in the last 2 years or so, I've really started to find a balance that, like, I'm going to tour for 3 or 4 months of the year, and the rest of the year is going to be all this work. So I'm always on the road because of that, but it's a different type of on the road.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you're kind of fulfilling all of the different needs as well, that you've got that way. And you could be like, okay, I'm actually going to do this project as well. And,
Yeah.
really get
Yeah.
stuck into that. And it makes a difference, which is just, so positive as well.
I hope so. And like,
Mm.
oh, sure, look, we'll die trying at least.
No, it's great. It was funny. I was laughing because, again, just to harp back to that episode, I was watching when you went back to Ireland and your granny's there.
It's so funny. My granny,
It
oh
was-
my God.
She's a gem. Like, protect her and
She's
all.
97.
Wow.
She just turned 97, yeah.
But she was like, I was laughing, and she's like, oh, it's a bit like a cult, veganism.
It's a bit like, but it's a nice one.
And a good cult, yeah. And she's like, and it's funny because it's like, it is like the movement is growing like so much, when you were like at the fruit and veg shop that you've been to, and there's the guy from Brazil who's
Foxy.
working there, Foxy,
Oh, yeah.
and he's vegan, right? And it's like more and more prevalent, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, this is great. It is going in that
Yeah.
direction.
Totally. But like, I have a conversation with my nanny often when I'm home, and with, the guys like that. When I think back to my childhood, and when I think back to how people actually eat, and I always, I slagged my granny that, sure, you're basically vegan, because the way that we would traditionally eat, and a lot of cultures, before like abundance became and marketing became so prevalent, and more in bigger portions, it was actually only a tiny piece of meat, probably once a day. The rest of the plate in Ireland is always like potatoes, a mountain of potatoes.
Yeah.
We're mad for our spuds, and some cabbage, some carrots, whatever. And when I say to nanny, like, in breakfast would be porridge, oatmeal, maybe toast, or if you're fancy, orange or something, bit of fruit. But when you really like dissect how we eat, it's vast majority plant-based. And that is actually the case for a lot of people. But our psyche around meat being so important in the center point is so interesting. And it just became more and more over the years. So when people are asking for like tips and tricks on how to, have more plant-based meals, I'm like, well, actually look at your day. Like, I remember the first time I talked to Molly, and she's been living outside of Dakar for years now. I was on the phone to her, and she was at her house in La Simone. And she's like, yeah, I don't know how hard it's going to be for you here when you come, because I'm not worried at all. Like, I know already that like one of my favorite, like, I love West African food, curries, mafe, all that stuff. I'm like, hey, just tell me what you ate today. And she's like walking around. They have lots of fruit trees. She's like, oh, well, I had papaya and I had this. And she lists everything plant-based
Just
except for
tick.
fish because they live on the coast. And I remember being on the phone to her saying, so you're vegan?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, no, we eat. And she's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much everything. Because we
Mm.
eat a lot of millet. They eat a lot of like amazing grains, all this stuff. So when you really step back and look at what you're eating, like culturally, there's so many things that just with a small tweak. Like I remember being in Turkey a couple of months ago, and I love everyone. Again, it was one of those places where people said it's gonna be so hard. It's all kebabs. Like Turkish food is super vegan,
Yes.
super vegan. So because like it's just food is all psychology. So it's how you're looking at it, right? If you're convinced that one way meat is everything, meat is the centerpiece, you're gonna, it's gonna take time for your mind's eye to sort of shift that. But because I look at it as like this bigger, there's like, I always say the opposite. I think veganism is so easy because we don't eat we only don't eat two things,
Yeah.
meat and dairy, and then I eat everything else. So
I agree. Yeah, it is. I don't know if it's a mind shift. It's really hard. I think if you're stuck in that kind of rigid mind frame, it's always going to be more difficult. I mean, a lot
yeah,
of vegans, we were veggie first, for the most part. So you're kind of already halfway into that,
of
and it's
course,
not
yeah.
so difficult. But yeah, some people will never. They just don't want to learn as well, and that's their thing,
And
isn't it?
I think I always encourage people like, hey, if you're willing to do 1 or 2 days a week,
Yeah.
awesome. I think that sometimes the vegan movement can, be very detrimental to itself, aiming for perfection. Of course,
Yeah.
we want a world where animals are no longer slaughtered anywhere, but we also have to be realists in the sense that, like, I think it's very positive if people are willing to shift towards like do a meat-free day, do 2 meat-free days, because you start to learn then culinary yourself how creative it is. I've had so many friends do that, or bandmates over the years, or and I start cooking, and then they discover this whole abundance of a new way of cooking, or how simple it actually is, or how great vegetables taste when you get into cooking them. So I think that we have to be encouraging, and because you can't, like, we're all raised, and I come from a massive meat culture.
Mm.
It's I get it.
Yeah.
Like vegans aren't stopping eating meat because they don't like the taste of it. It's because of the reality of what has to happen for the meat to get to the table. So luckily now we live in a time where, of course, I don't really encourage like all the substitute meats and that they're better in the sense that, there's many aspects of them that are better, but I'm always like, just look, Whole Foods,
Mm-hmm.
plant-based, like it's incredible what you can do with your simple veggies, beans, rice, grains, whatever. So yeah, it's I wish it wasn't so complicated, and I wish we didn't, like, as lovely as it is to talk to you, I wish
Uh,
we didn't have to like
I know.
have these.
You kind of have to keep repeating the message as well. I mean, so many different like entry points for people into veganism. And I like what
Yeah.
you were saying, yeah, people will come at it from different angles. So maybe for a lot of people around the culinary side, and it's like you say, oh, just try 2 days of this, or maybe just
Mm-mm.
try this meal plan. Did you enjoy that? Or for people who do eat a lot of meat, you're like, okay, well, let's switch to the processed stuff so you can see the similarity in taste, and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's then the journey. But yeah,
Because it is the most, as you know, it's the most powerful thing. Like, and
Mm.
not everybody's going to come at it from ethics, but if you don't care about the ethics of it or the animals, whatever, but like if you have children, you should care about the planet in the long run, as far as there's just literally not enough land to keep producing the way that we do. Just how gross it is on the
Mhm.
land. Again, all the waste and all that. Like, we know all this, how much land has to be cleared, the runoff into the oceans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if everybody collectively does an individual act of reducing, that's profound.
Yeah.
Like, that is so profound. And it's like, in a world and in a time where it's so overwhelming, everything seems so overwhelming and everything seems so discombobulated. The fact that we can actually control that, I think, is amazing. And I think that's super empowering, that like every choice, every time you go to the grocery store and you vote with your dollar or
Mhm.
euro or pound or wherever you are, you get to make a vote of how the system will be. So I think that that's incredibly powerful.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me. Over the next sort of 12 months, what have you kind of got coming up then? I know you're going to throw yourself into some projects and
Yeah, yeah. I was hoping to be rest for a minute, but no, I say that and then I never want to. We just I was just in studio with Bruce, so Bruce is doing a new album, so we've been doing demos for that. I have mostly foundation related work, so I'll be planning all the the next steps for the African project that I'm doing. And then I will go into rehearsals in July, August for Bruce. We get ready for tour. We're going on tour August, September, October. So we do a 3-month tour. And then at the end of that, I will sleep for a few days and then I'll go back to Africa, and I'll be all over the place. So I have a couple and then I'm doing a little bit of like conference related work because I'm starting to navigate into the spaces of like speaking more conferences on bigger corporations stopping greenwashing and actually doing some action. So between music and the projects in Africa, and a project I'm doing with veterans and Highway to Health, and there's always something.
There's always something. I mean, if there's anything we can do as well to help you, just let us know, because we can push stuff out as well.
I'd love to give you some of the Highway to Health content to just have it out there, and you guys can do with it as you please. It's just hopefully a positive, a positive thing for people to see.
It's great. It's such a good series. It's really good.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the work you guys do for the animals.
No, thank you. Great speaking to you, Tanya. And take care of yourself.